I'm wearing new contacts. I just had my prescription changed after 6 years. You ever wait that long? Then you get new lenses. You're like, man, I could have been seeing things. How can instantly improved vision not be at the top of your to-do list? I'll see tomorrow. I don't have time. I don't have time to see clearly. No, I don't. No, I can't do that. You see what's on my desk?
I switched it up on you. I don't know if you caught that. That's another one. He's funny. And it's funny, too, because I actually need to go to an optometrist appointment for like a year now. I need to do it. And I was watching that going, yeah, that's pretty funny. We're going to wrap up our series called Margin today. And I want to let you know there's 2 mistakes on your outline. So you'll see them. I'll highlight them. But in the spirit of today, I did not feel a need to reprint or stress. Of course, they passed spell check and Grammarly and all that, but they were just 2 mistakes. So I'll highlight those. So for those of you who like to find mistakes and point those out, I'm going to be ahead of you. So I'm sorry to take away your joy. And then also, to me, this is always a challenging sermon. And it's because I love to preach a text, a story, a certain pericope, like just like camp out in a thing. And I did that week 1. I gave a theological background to the concept of margin, to the practice of rest. And then I love to talk about Jesus, and I did that in week 2. And last week we talked about Jesus. We looked at Jesus' life. But when you follow Jesus around, Jesus did not go, all right, sit down, here we go, Leviticus, start to finish. All right, Deuteronomy, undo the scrolls, and let's read it and unpack it. He said, hey, you see that lady there, the way she gave the 2 lepta? Like give like that. Or I have not seen such great faith in Israel. Or he would highlight a situation and he would point it out. And so there is liberty in preaching. But for me, I like to hit one text, but this is a little bit of, well, it's not a little bit, it's a lot of practical things. I said it would be this way. It's a very practical message. But there's scripture in there so you don't think, wait, this is not even biblical. Of course it's biblical. I wouldn't preach anything that I believe or know to not be biblical. But for me, it's just one of those ones that feels a little different. And so if you hear me kind of mumbling through it, it's because I love to open the text, go here, let's go and exegete or unpack or preach the unction from the text. But the Lord said, no, this is what you're going to do. You're going to talk about 4 ways to unhurry your life. And so, again, quick recap, and quick is in super quick. Margins, the space between our load and our limits. I am a notorious packer-inner. I like to push things and do things and make things happen. And so even Thursday, I had a meeting at 5:30 and then, or 5:45, and then a meeting. Then I was going to go hang out with my grandkids. 2 of them, and do that, and then I was trying to catch a flight to go to California. And so I was, and the guy, Paul, I was traveling with said, that feels really rushed. Why don't you just slow down a little bit? We'll go a little bit later to the airport. And so I like to kind of stick things in, and the Lord has to say, hey, slow down, have some space, have some time. Let's not rush through things. I'm a fast eater. I'm a fairly fast talker and try to get a lot done in a day. So this is difficult for me. The space between your load and your limits is something I've struggled with. Now, I said last week that I would correct it. I did correct it. If Jesus wasn't in a hurry, we shouldn't be either. No probably about it, no maybe, no suggestions. If we are imitating Jesus, then we follow Jesus. And I said if we want the life that Jesus brings, we need to follow the lifestyle that Jesus had. And so we don't need to be in a hurry. And so if life feels like you're in a hurry, I would submit to you and myself that we're probably not following Jesus like we need to be. Jesus did not rush through life. And often we make this mistake. It's subconscious, but it's there. If I just had a little more time, the solution is not more time. It's not. That's not the solution to living an unhurried life. The solution to living an unhurried life is not more time. I have to say that a couple of times because I think in our minds, we're like, but if I had more time, I wouldn't be so hurried. There's another way. You could do less. You could do the most important things instead of all the things. And if we could remember that it's easier to fantasize about more time than it is to do the ruthless elimination and to simplify and to slow and to just think, like, what's most important? What matters most? And so today I'm going to look at 4 practices for unhurrying your life. Again, it's very practical, they're biblical, and they're challenging, if we're being honest. And some I've hit before at different levels of emphasis, and some are maybe if you weren't here in the past or you didn't hear a spiritual disciplines message or you're not familiar with the Psalms or how Jesus rolled and you missed last week, like this could be a bit of a challenge. But the first one is silence and solitude. There's something about silence and solitude that is so centering and so reconnecting and so important. And I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to dare you to practice this tonight. Tonight. At some point. And I'm saying tonight because this way you can get done what you need to get done, what you think you got to get done, what you hope to get done, but at some point tonight, sunset, before bedtime, tell your spouse, if you live with married, like tell your kid, like just make a point, make a priority. I'm going to get a chair. Doesn't need to be a perfect chair. Like just get a chair. Go sit outside. If it's a room that you can sequester yourself in, but just find a place that you can be all alone. No phone, no music. As quiet of a place as possible. Silence. There's something in the scriptures we see. There's something that God did in us where he speaks loudly in the silence. And there's something about solitude. There's beauty in community. There's power in community. Like we're not supposed to forsake this assembly. But there is something so life-giving in solitude. I've done a message on it before. If you heard it, you would remember me saying it's not about disconnecting from, like if I'm going to go be by myself, it's not, I can't be around Kim. It's I've got to connect with God. The priority is connecting. So it's counterintuitive. Maybe we think, I'm going to disconnect. Well, you're going to be by yourself for the purpose of connecting with God. You're going to get real quiet so that you can hear loud. And I hit it first week, Psalm 46:10. The psalmist writes, "Be still and know that I am God." And as I said, like I've always read that, preached that psalm to say, oh wait, it's that you be still, and as the result of the stillness is the knowing. But when you look at it in the Hebrew, it's flipped. It's, I am God. Be still. It's a different emphasis. It comes back to trust. We just sang it. 'Tis so sweet to trust in Jesus. And so if you feel hurried, you feel stressed, anxiety's high, lack of focus, lack of centering and peace, and your life doesn't feel like it's got a foundation, maybe the practice of silence and the practice of solitude is exactly what the great physician has called you to. Again, let me set it so you don't miss what it really is. Isolation is escaping. This is not about, I got to get away from everybody. I got to just get, I'm so stressed. I just got to get away. I don't want to be around anybody. I'm peopled out. This isn't isolation. Isolation is escaping, but solitude, biblical practiced solitude is always about engaging, connecting with God. And so if you look at your life, you do an inventory of your heart and your level of peace and your disposition and how jumpy or easily angered or low-level stressed or how chaotic or how when somebody says, how are you doing? You never go, yeah, I'm great. You're always like, I'm busy, I'm so busy, I'm so busy. Like maybe it's silence and solitude that is the practice that will help you unhurry your life. Henry Nouwen says, without solitude, it is virtually impossible to live a spiritual life. We do not take the spiritual life seriously if we do not set aside some time to be with God and listen to Him. We do not take the spiritual life seriously if we do not set aside some time to be with God and listen to Him. I wish this was cutting edge, bleeding edge, like new. This practice of silence and solitude has been practiced by every great theologian, pastor, leader, follower, throughout church history. We have thousands of years of people doing just this. And it's not out of style. It's not irrelevant. It is more important today. We face more distraction today. We have more opportunities to disconnect by pretending that we're connected. And so silence and solitude is a practice. Second, Sabbath. I preach sermons on Sabbath. Often they come on Labor Day. I'm not going to re-preach a sermon on Sabbath, but I'm going to tell you that Sabbath is a priority. We hit it in week 1. God practiced it. Jesus lived it, modeled it. And how we think we wouldn't benefit from it or why we don't make it more of a priority is beyond me. And I say we collectively, not like you. I mean we as in me. And we concern ourselves with the obligation of the Sabbath. Well, do I have to? Is that the law? Is that the Old Testament? And in doing so, we miss the opportunity of the Sabbath. I think your outline, in fact, I should have picked up an outline. That would have been helpful because I know there's 2 mistakes. And I'll be able to tell as soon as I look at this. Nope, that's the right one. We got the first one, Mark 2. In Mark 2, Jesus is speaking. He says the Sabbath was made for man, and not man for the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord, even of the Sabbath. For Jesus to exercise his lordship over something this dramatically, this early in his ministry, tells you how important it is. He's like, hey, I'm over this. This is an important thing. The Sabbath, it wasn't like I make a Sabbath for man. Like man's made to rest. Man's made to engage. Man was always intended to be in the presence of God. But I understand that the Sabbath is not always easy, especially these days. It's just not. But it's always effective. And I say always, meaning once you get into the rhythm, once it becomes part of your life, there'll be a pushback, there'll be a learning curve. If you said, next Saturday, I am going to Sabbath, I'm going to truly recreate, rest, be in God's presence, I'm going to disengage with work, with busyness, with idle, I'm going to sleep well, I'm going to eat well, I'm going to worship well, I'm going to be still well. man, you're going to have every reason. The enemy's going to come and go, no, 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 don't slow down, don't slow down, don't stop. You'll hear from God. Don't pause. You'll get into his presence. Oh, something will come up. But once you and I get in this rhythm, it becomes who we are, part of how we live, and the effectiveness of a Sabbath. I can't highlight it enough. It's just effective. And this is the double quote that you have. It's not another Henry Nouwen quote that we had above, but Eugene Peterson says this: Sabbath is that uncluttered time and space in which we can distance ourselves from our own activities enough to see what God is doing. To be able to see what God is doing. But when you're constantly looking at what you have to do, like Brian Regan joked, like, you see what's on my to-do list? Like when we're constantly focused on our stuff, our work, our production, we miss God's presence. We miss what God is doing. We miss what we could sweetly trust him to do as we Sabbath. Third, simplicity. We're going to talk about a practice that's not easy. Simplicity. Simplicity is a catch-all. It's kind of a junk drawer term. I'll unpack it the best I can, but simplicity is less, but more. It's doing fewer things, but more important things. It's doing fewer things, but things better. It's learning to live and be content with less. I think we get lulled into thinking we need it. Hold on. I won't even project. I am a hoarder. I'll just start there. You know when things get taken to charities? Usually, it's when I leave town. It's true. Last night, yesterday afternoon, Kim and I went and took a truckload of things to give away that were put in my truck, unbeknownst to me, while I was in California. And I sat there with a perfectly good filing cabinet, one of several filing cabinets that we were donating, thinking, well, what if I need this filing cabinet? I could still, it was hard for me to hand it over. My wife was chucking it, like, here you go. She was so happy. I was having withdrawals. This is staggering and sobering. If you make $25,000 a year, family income, you're in the top 10% of the world's wealth. If you make over $34,000 a year, you are in the top 1% of the globe in terms of wealth. $34,000 a year, top 1% of the planet. Do we really need it? Can we live without it? You know why Kim and Emily cleaned the garage when I was out of town? So Kim could park her car in the garage. We were letting our junk take the place of the car. Like the car stayed outside and the junk was in, and sometimes you and I, we fill our days and our time and our schedules with stuff, but it's not needed. It's not the most important stuff. Again, in your outline, there's a Matthew quote or a reference to Matthew. It's really from Luke 12:15. It's the right words, just wrong reference. Then he, Jesus, said to them, watch out. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions. Life's not made up of that. Life is not fueled by that. Life is not about an abundance of possessions. But we amass and we gather and we hoard these possessions as if our lives depended upon it. And simplicity is, at the core, all about focus. It's not about, well, you should get rid of that extra thing or this, like, it feels dirty. Like, this is a weird thing to confess. But Kim, the other day, just as only Kim could go, she was very snide and sweet. I don't know how she does it. She's just like a perfect combination of like, wait, was that being nice or was that meant to hurt? Like, I don't know. She said something like, of course everyone needs 7 gas cans. And I looked out as I was cleaning through my garage, and I had 7 spare gas cans. And I said, well, you need the diesel one for if my truck runs out. You need a gas one, so if someone's car, I have to take gas to somebody or put gas in the lawnmower. And then you need the oil and gas mix for the blower and the weed eater. You need 3. And she's like, yeah, no, I get that. We have 7. And I couldn't justify it, and I just sat there and felt stupid. I was like, yeah, well, I've had 7 in my garage for a long time, so what am I supposed to do? You think I'm going to give a perfectly good gas can away to somebody? Or sell it and make, simplicity is all about focus. It's not saying you got to have a certain number of gas cans. It's which ones do you need and which ones do you not need? And if you don't need it, don't hang on to it. Don't hoard it. Don't hold it like it's somehow going to bring you life. I got 7 gas cans. You're not smart. You're dumb. She didn't say it, but I felt it. And if we could practice simplicity. Jerry Seinfeld has that bit about when in the future does everyone switch to the silver jumpsuit? Like that kind of simplicity. You ever look at your closet and you're like, what am I going to wear? It's not the rest of the world. I remember one time we were doing mission work in Mexico. We're going down the street, and we see kids going to school at 8 in the morning. Then later that afternoon, about 4 o'clock, we see more kids going to school. And I'm like, why are kids going to school? Oh, because you have to have shoes to go to school. And so the first set of if there's 2 brothers, one of them wears the shoes and goes from 8 to 4, and the other set goes from 4 till midnight. They have to swap shoes and wear shoes, and they have 1 pair of shoes between the 2 brothers, and so they change shoes, and then the other brother gets to go learn. Simplicity. Doing less so that you can live more, having less. Again, I said it would be practical. For those of you who want a proof text scripture kind of a deal on everyone, I don't even feel called to do that, but I'm going to give us some practices, some things to consider. I've given you paper and pencil. You might want to write some down. You don't have to. But before you buy something, ask yourself, what's the true cost? Not just the purchase cost, but the maintenance cost, the mindset cost, the stress cost. Well, it's like I got to keep up with it. I got to take care of it. I got to, what's the true cost? And you might even ask yourself, if I am oppressing someone or oppressing the earth buying this, is this helpful or harmful? Impulse buys are usually the result of a lack of focus and not living with simplicity. And maybe you say, you know what, I'm going to have fewer things. They're better things. I'll buy a more expensive T-shirt than a cheap T-shirt, or a more expensive thing that's not going to need to be repaired as much. But what if you shared? I have tools that I just, Emily, literally, and this is real time. I cleaned my garage last week. She's like, Dad, do you ever use that pitchfork? I'm like, no, but you don't throw away tools. And she's like, you should. Are you a farmer, Dad? Do I need some secret life? She looked at me like I had 3 eyes. She's like, you need a pitchfork? And I thought, no, I guess I don't need a pitchfork. And I know it's weird things for your pastors to confess. He's got a gas can problem, or he has a pitchfork, and we got to pray for him. It's weird, but you could borrow some. In fact, if anybody needs to borrow a pitchfork, I'm your guy. Call me up. Get in the habit of giving things away. Live by a budget. These are common things to a lot of people, but maybe you could enjoy something without owning it. Maybe you borrow it. Maybe you rent it. Maybe you don't need it like you think you need it. And if you could cultivate simple pleasures for things that are meaningful, you don't need 10 coffee mugs. Maybe you need 1 favorite coffee mug, and that's your mug, and you're okay with having 1 mug. Everybody else has this whole cabinet or cupboard of mugs, but maybe we get good at recognizing the propaganda of sales. We're never going to have enough if we look at our Instagram feed or look at commercials or look at the YouTube pop-ups. Like, we gotta, like, every time I find myself like, oh man, I think I need that. Do you really? Like, I don't think you do. What if we were known as a people who revolt not against this party or this practice, but against the spirit of materialism that just says, you know what? We're going to live with less. I don't know. Something to consider. Maybe you turn your smartphone into a dumb phone. Take away all those apps that you don't need. Maybe you parent your phone. Simplicity looks like we do with our kids. All right, you go to bed. I'm going to stay up a little longer, but you're going to bed. We put our phone to bed. We don't let it control us up until the last minute of scrolling before we sleep. We set some times for email. We set some times on our TV. We set some limits. We simplify. We don't just open ourselves up to everything, but we focus and say, I'm going to watch this show or this series, or I'm going to spend this much time on my phone, but I'm not going to spend all my time. I'm not going to, it rang like Pavlov's dogs, and we just, and I do it. And then we go, I don't know if I have time for that. Don't multitask, single task. Maybe simplicity is just about considering what you have in regards to your time and your possessions and your talents and your abilities, and being very intentional about how we live and do those things. And then lastly, Mother Teresa has a great quote. This would be more about when you give stuff away and when you learn to do with less and when you get better at charitable giving and you're more generous and you go, you know what, I could buy this for myself, but I'm going to do this for somebody else. But I love this. Live simply so that others may simply live. Live simply so that others may simply live. Mother Teresa. She practiced it. She sure did it. And then lastly, I'll say slowing. And this is a difficult one. It's a difficult one. Our world runs at a high clip, at a fast pace. We hate the slow lane. We don't go to the supermarket and go, oh, which line's long? I'll choose that. Air fryer versus regular fryer. Microwave. Can you do? Anybody that wants to make money on YouTube and the exercise, it's here's how to get more bang, more fat loss, more muscle growth in less time, less effort. It's always about speeding things up. They used to have courting, now they have speed dating. But what about slowing? What about just slowing down and really thinking about your day or your conversation or your relationship with God? I remember being in school and watching the Challenger disaster. It was horrible, it was sad, and it turns out that it was the result of some rushing. There were many warning signs coming up to the launch, and engineers had a lot of concerns about those O-rings. We don't think they're good. We don't think they're safe. These seals are crucial for having hot gas escape, and we think we shouldn't launch. We don't feel comfortable with launching. But NASA made the decision to go ahead with it. They were under immense pressure to maintain their schedule, and their fears that further delays would damage their reputation, would hurt their standing, could even jeopardize future funding. I think maybe waiting versus exploding in the air 90 seconds after launch would have been a better move for your funding or your public perception, but they made the decision to go for it. And for us, the words from the psalmist, from David in Psalm 23, he makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet, still, slow-moving waters. If you were here last summer when I preached through the series on Psalm 23, Traveling Light, I talked about how sheep would get the burrs in their eyes or cataracts as they're older, their fur would cover it, and they weren't intelligent enough to understand that a fast-moving river was a danger, and they would go to drink and they would get swept away, fall in, and die. But a still body of water, a slow-moving brook, where the shepherd said, hey, this is a safe place, was ideal for life and the sustaining of that life. And my friend Evan, who's had several wise things that I'll never forget, he said, you know, Joel, this was early on. I think it was before we even started in Bara in 2009 or early in that year. He said, you better slow down or God will slow you down. You better rest or God will rest you. He makes me lie down in green pastures. There's something about slowing down. But you know what's so beautiful about that? Because usually when we think, if I slow down, I'll never catch up. If I slow down, I'll get behind. If I slow down, everything's going to keep going, and I'm going to be back here living slow like an Amish person in this crazy world. But I'll submit to you that if you will slow down, you'll catch up to God. That in the slowing, there's a connecting that is beautiful and biblical and powerful. And again, just some handles, some practical things, not the exhaustive list ever, but what if we drove the speed limit? It's a novel concept. You could make a case about it from the Bible for sure. What if you just got in the slow lane and you just said, I'm going in the slow lane because today I'm going to go slow. I don't want to have to be stressed or think about, come to a full stop at stop signs. I was in California yesterday and on Friday, and I forgot, California stop. That's just what we did, just roll through, text and drive. Again, I can confess that you want to talk about gas cans or, other pitchforks. I mean, texting and driving, I've never been drunk, but man, I have texted and drove, and it's a sin, and it's stupid, and it's selfish. But I got to answer the text. I got to send the text. I got to pull over, man. Maybe just let that person go in front of you in line. Not just, get the closest parking space. I got to pack it in and make it. Just turn that ringer off. Turn that TV off. Turn your mind off. Journal. I don't know anybody that's ever got to the end of their life with a body of thought and heart and hope and hard work in the pages, the tear-stained pages, the messy pages of a journal, and regretted taking the 10 minutes to go to just write their heart, their hurts and their hopes. I don't know anybody that's ever taken the time to faithfully, practically journal and get to the end and go, it's a waste. I would love to have a note that my grandfather wrote. I would love to have something. My kids, they clean out some boxes in their garage or my prayer closet or some files. They're going to see a lot of me. I go before Kim, she's going to see a lot of me that are just journal. I got out of town. I left. Our plane flew out Thursday at supposed to be 9:15. Left at 10 and got back at 1:20 yesterday. It'd be 40 hours basically. It was a great respite. I sat on the beach and put my feet in the Pacific and watched a football game and ate good food and spent time with a friend and went and saw a 93-year-old man named Bill at breakfast. Had espresso with Giuseppe and my first coffee. We had a lot of coffee on the trip, I'll be honest. When my best friend Stan surprised him at Starbucks there in San Carlos. They say that the vacation peaks on day 8. I had less than 2 days, and it was a great little respite, a gift. Maybe slowing for you looks like, and look, you can borrow someone's tent. you can find a camp spot. Like, don't make it a financial thing. Like, make it a intentional, I'm going to just still and stop. And when we were meeting with Giuseppe, he just was making the espresso, and I used an espresso, and it's quick and like 30 seconds, and he's cooking it on the thing. You could smell it, and we sat there and ate Italian plums and figs from their garden right there in the yard, and it's like time stood still. I was like back in the old country. Paul and I were sitting there with Giuseppe just having this conversation about things that mattered, and it wasn't rushed, it wasn't hurried, it was a gift. And so, again, I mean, if you have kids and you want them to know that you love them, time. That's how you spell love to a kid. Like, slow down. And of course, when I don't have it in my notes is when I'll get choked up. But we left on Thursday, but on Wednesday night, Noah said, "Hey, Pops, tomorrow after, when I get home from school, can we go on a walk?" And I'm thinking, I got a lot of stuff I got to get done before I leave town. Like, I left the office, drove home. No, you ready to go on a walk? And it was a quarter of a mile there and a quarter of a mile back, half a mile. He said, he's 7 years old. I didn't know about this until I was like my 30s, I think. He said, "You know, it's really good that we're out in the sun looking, so we get the vitamin D." That's what I was thinking, Noah. Good job. It's just a sweet conversation. It's fun. 15 minutes, man. John Mark Comer says to walk with Jesus is to walk with a slow, unhurried pace. Hurry is the death of prayer. It only impedes and spoils our work. It never advances it. So my hope and prayer is that there's been something of value in the practical unpacking of how to live an unhurried life that we'll practice, we'll try, we'll hang on to, we'll take a foray into and say, you know what? I'm going to do it. God did it. Jesus did it. We should. And lo and behold, this gift of communion, you have to wonder if Jesus, right before he's about to die, said, "Man, I don't know if I have time for this meal. I got a lot on my mind, a lot on my plate." But he didn't. He gave us this time to remember, this time to be still, this time to enjoy. It was a meal. It was beautiful. So I hope that as we commune now, even in this time, we'll just slow, simplify. It'll be like the shortest little Sabbath we could take, just a time to connect with God. Let's pray. God, forgive us when we fill our schedules and our garages and our minds to the brim, leaving little or no time for rest, reflection, or relationship with you. Help us to slow, simplify, to Sabbath. I ask God that we would hear from you. We would focus on you. We would be concerned with the things you're concerned with and about the things you're about. And tonight, I ask God that we'd take some time for silence and solitude. We might not be ready for a full Sabbath, and the thought of driving in the slow lane is causing a nervous tick, and getting rid of a file cabinet or pitchfork is challenging for some. But I pray that we would just get alone and get quiet and get with you and take a walk. take a walk in our heart and let us hear from you of the kind of people you've called us to be. We love you. We thank you. And we need you. It's through Jesus that I pray for a church I love. Amen.